Members, I'm sure that many of you have heard the expression or heard the song that this is a man's world. And when this country that we all live in now was created, it was a white man's world. This country was constructed to ensure that black people and other minorities and women and gays and lesbians and people that practice certain religions, it was constructed to all but guarantee failure. But what the builders of this country could not fathom was that same American spirit that drove them to want to be the best that they could be, to want to live a good life, is the exact same spirit that drove each and every one of us. There may have been more hurdles in our path, but we jumped over them, we crawled under them, we destroyed them. And this great nation that we all love, and it is, even with its flaws and its pimples, the greatest nation on this planet, we are the reason why. All of us are the reason why this is the greatest nation in the world. Let's give our country a round of applause. It is so important for us as a government because it was governments back in the day that put in place laws and ordinances that made it challenging for people of color. So that's why it's so important for us as a government, for us as LA, to recognize and celebrate the contributions of all people. When you hear the expression, we the people, guess what? We are those people. When I walk into this chamber, I look at Mitch O'Farrell, and Mitch, you may not look like the classic indigenous person or Native American, but it was Mitch's people who walked this country long before many others. And then the Europeans came in and they tried to conquer them, annihilate them, destroy them, but they did not. They're still here. And every year we listen to Mr. Blumenfield and Mr. Englander and Mr. Koretz stand up when they talk about the Holocaust, and they bring in survivors and they tell us the stories how they survived the concentration camps, and they tell us the stories of their relatives that did not. And every year, Mr. Bonin, God bless him, Bill Rosendahl, Ron Galprin, and Mitch O'Farrell bring in individuals from the LGBT community where we talk about the great contributions that they've made to this great nation. And I am right, Mr. Bonin, it is LGBTQ. You didn't add any other symbols or initials yet. And it was right here in this very chambers that I met the young lady, Latina lady who was a child, and her family filed the first lawsuit. It was the precursor to Brown versus Board of Education. The reason why we are LA and we are moving forward is because we recognize the history of all of our people. I am so proud today because the individuals that are surrounding me, at my side, sitting, standing, are the reason why you can go to a small city, mid-sized city, a big city, and turn on the television news and see people of color. The individuals that came before them cracked that door open, and the individuals that stand with me today are the ones that are standing tall, holding those doors open so that anybody that's qualified and anybody that has the drive will have a shot to tell the news. They're the reason why you see diversity on television today where it relates to the news. You know, my grandparents would read the newspapers because they wanted to see what was going on with Negroes and colored people. And those stories were not even written by us. So black people decided that they would create their own newspapers so that their people would actually know what the hell was going on. And not only were these informational periodicals for us to read, they led in the fight for civil rights and for human rights. And people need to recognize that when we as black people stood up to fight for our rights, we were fighting for yours as well. We fought for the rights of everybody in this country. So I'm so honored that in this year's Black History Month display, we will give you a snapshot, because it is impossible for us to get all of the history. But there will be a snapshot that will highlight the newspaper articles and the people who started them and the challenges they had to go through. And also, we will talk to you about these individuals that, I mean, can you envision what it was like to try to get on television and having your bosses saying, maybe they're too dark, maybe they are too light, and people will think that we're supporting race mixing. What kind of weird conversations went on in those boardrooms? And I will also tell you this, that those individuals that broke into this business, they weren't good. They had to be the best of the best of the best. So I invite each and every one of you to go to the bridge and to look at this display where we try to give you, again, a snapshot of Black history where it relates to the media. And there's one panel from a newspaper that probably none of you ever heard of. And you walk and say, why the hell is that here? It's called the Call-in Post. The Call-in Post is from Cleveland, Ohio. That is the town of my birth. The very first job I ever had in my life was selling that newspaper, 20 cents. Every time I sold one, I got a nickel. I got 50 newspapers once a week. People would see me and run the other way because I sold those 50 papers. $2.50 is what I would make. But the first African-American mayor of a major city was from Cleveland, Ohio. His name was Carl Stokes, made history. But also, he's the first African-American to ever become a news anchor in New York. He was a great man, so that's why you will see that on the wall. And what I urge all of us to do, wouldn't it be cool, David and Monica and Mike, if we did displays on the bridge that celebrated everybody's heritage? Wouldn't it be great? So that people could come here. Last year we had students from LAUSD, So I'm going to work with all of you if you want to do it, because the displays are a big hit. And I just looked at Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Krikorian taught us every year we stand up with Mr. Krikorian and demand that Turkey recognizes all of the atrocities that they committed against the Armenian people. That's who we are. We are LA. We are the leaders. So today's presentation celebrates my people, my brothers and my sisters. And Albert, I jokingly said to you, where's Albert Lord that works for me? Where are you, Albert? I jokingly said I was going to come up here and do this without any of my notes. And I did it without any of my notes. You can give me a round of applause. I'll take a mercy applause. But guess what, Albert? I don't know who I'm supposed to bring up next. I think it's Miss Edmonds, right? Right?
Ariana Edmonds.
Well, if I said Edmonds, why? Yeah, I was right. Miss Edmonds from the Liberator, the first paper. Let's bring her up.